Well, hello there, people. I got called out by this chap up here for not reacting to his video about Windows versus macOS, why I switched. It's a 16-minute video, so this is going to be a long one. What I would recommend you doing, and I was debating on doing this, instead of just, we all know some people like macOS, some like Windows, some like Linux, it don't fucking matter. I think the biggest entertainment value of all of this here is the comment section. This is going to show you, if you read this comment section, 400 and something, 440 responses. This is going to tell you and show you why the Linux community is and the Mac community is and the Windows community is like because if he wants to waste the money, or if he wants to give something to the devil, a kidney or his firstborn or something like that, it's his choice. He's not hurting anyone. So stop being angry, okay? He's not stealing your kidney. He's not stealing your food. He's not taking your girlfriend away from you. He's just using a product that you don't like. Who gives a fuck? Okay? Just calm your tits. Be nice. But let's react to the video and have this in your mind that a lot of people down below are really angry at him for, bro, you're not using Linux and open source, and then keeling over.
Hey guys, this is Christian, and if you're following my channel for quite some time, you probably know that I used to be a big fan of Windows. I mean, I've made several tutorials about customizing my Windows terminal, about Microsoft's open source projects, or about WSL2. So you can say Windows has been my daily driver for many years, and overall I was always very satisfied with it. Until now. Because I need to confess, since I bought my very first Apple computer, the MacBook Air M2, that has changed. I absolutely...
Oh, why are you buying it, bro? It's too expensive. You're locked into an ecosystem, man. What are you doing? You should be using Linux. It's almost like using Mac if you're using GNOME. Yeah, man. You fucking sold yourself to the devil. How dare you? How dare you? It actually looks really nice, to be honest. But yeah, how dare you?
Absolutely fell in love with macOS so much that I even retired my old...
Look, like macOS has copied GNOME. Or is it GNOME copying macOS when we really think about it?
Old PC and bought another Apple computer, the Mac Mini M2 Pro. And currently I'm...
Again, too expensive, overkill, you send yourself to this devil. Don't you know that Apple is the worst thing ever and blah blah. You get the idea here. It's a nice fucking computer.
Solely working on macOS, and I won't go back to Windows or Linux, at least not anytime soon. I know whenever I make a video about operating systems or comparing Windows, Linux and macOS, it's gonna be controversial.
Yeah, because a lot of people have no fucking life and they put way too much fucking importance into an operating system. Are you laying at your hospital getting your blood pressure checked, or something stopped, like a probe stop up your asshole, and say, no, I hope this is running an open source or Linux in the back end, or else you cannot stick that probe in my fucking anus? Not really. Stop. It don't fucking matter. I get it. You like something, I don't. That's all it comes down to. You think something is superior than the other. He don't.
For some people. But I'm not here to say that macOS is the best operating system or everything else is crap. Instead, I try to do a fair comparison from my point of view and showing you some insights into the tools and workflows I'm using as a tech guy. And if you're in a similar field or...
And there again, there you have it. When you're working in the tech world, it's really rarely that you determine how the companies run unless you are like the head of the IT department. You just fucking use what you get. I sit in front of a Windows computer at work every day. Do I wish it was a Linux computer? Yeah. Would I love for the whole company to run Linux? Yeah, it would make my little Linux heart happy. But who the fuck am I to go and tell a company what to do with their money or not? I don't own the company. I don't own his money. He works hard for what he gets and what he have. How should I be the boss of how he spent his money? I may disagree with it. He may throw it away on fucking beer, wine, vodka, coke, and hookers all day. As long as he's not fucking hurting anyone, other than himself, apparently. If you do that, who gives a fuck? I have watched this video, of course, but this whole video, and again, we have to remember the comment section. This whole video and the comment section, all I can think about is, who gives a fuck? Why do you care? Not towards him, but towards people that are angry at him. Why is that so big of a problem for you?
Or just interested in why I've made the full switch to macOS, I hope it's going to be useful to you. So let's do this and talk about some of the pros and cons of Windows and macOS. This video is supported by Teleport.
There you go.
But before we start looking further into the operating system itself and some of the reasons why I've made the full switch to macOS, we first should clarify one of the biggest differences between macOS and Windows, which is kinda obvious, but it is relevant when you want to compare them. And that is macOS only runs on Apple computers, while Windows...
Oh, okay, yeah, I thought you said only run on Mac Silicon. Yeah, okay, that... Yeah. Technically, you can do a hacking toss, but I get what he's saying here.
Windows can be installed on most PCs and laptops commonly available in the market. And you can choose from a wide range of hardware configurations, including Intel or AMD CPUs, as well as various graphics cards, memories, and storage.
And for some, that has a massive value. For some, this is the only reason they run a computer or a PC instead of a Mac is this here. That has a high value for them. And then some run Linux on those machines because that has a high value for them. Some run Haiku, some run FreeBSD, some run Windows because those have a high value for them for what they want out of this computer.
Storage options. If you want to get an Apple computer instead, well, you're always just limited to the models and configurations that Apple offers, and you can't really upgrade them afterward. I know some people will now say, well, there's also a Hackintosh around that would allow macOS to run on some
So on the whole upgrading part of it, I find it really hilarious that you see all of these people bitch and moan about that they can't, that you should not run Apple products because you can't upgrade their computer, while they are sitting gladly buying a new phone every fucking year, second year, because it needs an upgrade, or a new tablet every fucking year, second year, because you can't upgrade it. They don't have a problem with not being able to upgrade your phone and laptop, or sorry, not laptop, but tablet. But they have a problem with not being able to upgrade your PC.
Non-Apple computers, but I don't consider, and I never have considered this a viable option. So to make it simple for everybody, if you want to use macOS without any restrictions or without any issues, the only way is to just buy an Apple computer.
Yeah.
And in the past, that was always a no-go for me. Not only because I loved building my own PC and selecting all of the components myself, it also was a lot cheaper. Let's say it bluntly, before 2021, Apple computers were highly overpriced, and buying one would sometimes mean paying twice the money as for a similar Windows PC. But that all changed since Apple released their first computers with their own designed custom processor, the M1, in November 2021. The M1 chip, which is based on an ARM architecture and not the x86 architecture like Intel or AMD CPUs, introduced some significant improvements to Macs, including faster performance, longer battery life, and that allowed Apple to create powerful...
So when he say faster performance, I think he means faster performance per watt. That's kind of where the ARM processor right now is winning. It's like the performance per watt. And for some people that makes sense. And yes, video editing is kind of fast compared to a mid-range PC, but if you go in and buy like the high-end Ryzen CPUs and NVIDIA GPUs, which by itself cost probably as much as a fucking... like just the CPU itself costs more than a fucking Mac Mini does. So yeah, what the ARM processors or the Mac Mini's M series win on is price per performance and price per watt.
And more energy efficient devices, which sometimes even offer a better price value than similar Windows PCs. This completely changed the game, because suddenly Apple computers weren't just for die-hard Apple fans and rich hipsters anymore, at least the ones in the...
I still have this feeling that Apple people are a little bit hipster still, okay? It still have this, oh, my webcam got all crazy. It does that once in a while. It is a hipster brand, okay? It is like my organic fucking soap and my IPA beers and driving a Tesla kind of crowd.
Base configuration, but, well, that's another topic. But that was mainly the reason why I have decided to buy my very first Apple computer. It's not because I hated Windows or I wanted to move away from it. I actually just wanted to have a new laptop that is light and powerful enough to do 4K video editing. That's why I bought this one here, the new Mac.
What's wrong with that, people? If that's what he wants and that's how he wants to spend his money, and yeah, he may pay too much, then you could get a Windows or Linux PC for or a laptop for. But compare the battery life on Mac products compared to any fucking other products in the world is second to none. Apple has notoriously always have way better battery performance than any fucking product on average.
MacBook Air. And because I started to like macOS so much once I got used to it, I also wanted to have the same experience on the desktop as well, and just bought the Mac Mini. Just to say a few words about these devices, both the MacBook Air and the Mac Mini are just wonderful and offer incredible performance. As I said, I'm editing all my 4K YouTube videos on these two small devices without having any issues. Now, I'm not going.
Yeah, get a fucking laptop that can do 4K video editing. See how pricey that is. Again, with the same efficiency as a MacBook Air or a Mac Mini.
Going into too much detail on the devices itself because I'm not really a hardware reviewer and I actually don't want to be. But I can just tell you from my own experience that I'm very excited about the performance and also the build quality of these computers. So long story short, that was how I got into the Apple world. And now, since I've used my Macs for a couple of months in my day-to-day work, I found out I also like the operating system even a bit more than Windows. But let's go through some of these reasons one by one. First, I just embrace the look and feel of macOS. It's just,
again, a personal fucking choice. How can you argue with that? I like blue or red or blah blah blah, you like green or something else.
Just a very user-friendly and intuitive system with a beautiful interface. If you ever used a Mac before, you probably know what I'm talking about. And I would say Windows in comparison is a bit more chaotic.
Yeah.
It also has some nice design elements, but overall the user interface is less polished. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to say that Windows today looks terrible. However, it just feels that Apple follows a more consistent design philosophy than Windows.
Windows have a lot of mix between old technologies and new technologies and old design languages and new design languages. It's kind of the same issue I have with a lot of the Linux desktop environments, or Linux in general, is that we don't have a desktop design language, so you get massively fucking different things mixed together. And if you're running a Qt program under GNOME or GTK application under KDE, they sometimes can look like they're coming from two different fucking worlds and stuff like that.
What do I mean by that? So when you just take a look back at the Windows history, you can tell nearly every version of Windows introduced a new design, with some versions even making drastic changes that were later reverted after a few years, like in Windows 8 for instance. But at the same time, there are so many areas in the operating system, even today, that still look like in the early 2000s. Sure, that's not what Microsoft is telling you in their presentations, but once you start taking a look at some older menus or old system settings, you can see that there haven't been made any changes for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
And that is not really the case under macOS, at least what I can tell. There are still things that you might like or not like about the design. However, to me it seems that Apple always had a much more clear vision about what the OS should look like and what are the design principles, and that is something I really like about it. On the other hand, you have to say that you can't customize the look and feel of macOS a lot. If you like it, it's great. If you don't,
I will call it a little bit BS, and that the same with like Windows. You can customize anything if you know what the fuck you're doing. If you know how to circumvent the limitations of Windows and macOS, you can do a lot with it. But here's the thing, you have to know it. So if you have the knowledge, you can. So most people that say that you can't customize Windows and macOS, aka they're saying to you, I don't have the knowledge about it when it comes to Windows. AKA, I have no fucking idea how those systems run, basically. That's what they're telling you.
And well, you don't have many options to change it. But that's something everybody, I guess, needs to decide for themselves. And to me, the interface of macOS is just one thing that I generally like a bit more than in Windows, but that's of course not the only reason. When you start working with macOS, this is where it gets really interesting, because macOS and Windows are very different in the way how you interact with them. And I would say that both have their pros and cons. It's not that I like everything under macOS. For example, I still like the window management under Windows more, especially with Windows 11. There were some really nice changes, like
Yeah, this kind of I installed macOS in a VM just to mess around with it. Alone this feature, I know you can get a third-party plugin to get this on the macOS, but alone this feature not being built into macOS kinda is a turn off for me.
You could arrange the windows of different applications much faster. That's something that I still miss under macOS. I could fix that by installing a program that is called Moom, and that helps me to resize and reorganize windows with keyboard shortcuts, but it's a bit unfortunate that macOS doesn't have that built in. And there are also some other stupid things that are annoying, like the display management under macOS. That is just weird. However, all the problems that I...
So there's a video from a guy where he talks about how to choose the right display for your Mac, and basically is about pixel per inch. So there is I will see if you want that video, ask me. And I will pin it in the comment section.
I can complain about are usually minor issues and can be addressed by installing another tool, or if I can fix them, they are not making my experience on macOS terribly worse. I think it should be clear that nothing in this world is flawless, and whoever is praising macOS as the perfect operating system, well, it's far away from truth. But on the other hand, there are so many other things that are just better on macOS for me than they are under Windows, and they are making my life as a tech guy so much easier.
And that's what it comes down to. If a tool makes your life easier, why the fuck would you not use it? And again, it don't matter if it's Windows, Haiku, FreeBSD, macOS, Linux, if you have access to that tool and it makes your life easier, why the fuck would you not use it?
For instance, as an IT guy, you know that I'm often working with terminal programs, not just in the video tutorials here on this YouTube channel, but also in my day-to-day work. I do things like programming and automation with Python and shell scripts, or I'm using DevOps tools like Terraform, Ansible, or kubectl. I also like to manage my system settings and configs in .dot files with a Git client, something like Yadam. And for everything that you want to do in a terminal, macOS is just so much better, especially when you're already working with the Linux operating systems.
I will not say better. If you're coming from the Linux world, it makes more sense, but PowerShell, dude. Like, if you learn PowerShell and you understand, like, I'm just starting to learn PowerShell. It's fucking amazing.
Somewhere else, maybe in your own home lab or at work, because the underlying OS is quite different than Windows. While Windows uses the Windows NT kernel that has its roots in MS-DOS, macOS...
Yeah, no. I'm going to correct you there. The NT kernels don't have its root in DOS. It's a totally new design kernel. So back in the day, we had Windows NT. It is compatible with DOS programs and legacies and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, but it has its root in Windows NT. The old Windows 95 kernels and Windows 98 kernels and Windows ME kernels, if I'm not mistaken, they were basically based on DOS. They were using this a modified version of the DOS kernel. It's compatible with DOS.
Runs a highly customized kernel based on Unix and BSD. So it has a combination of Unix components along with Apple.
No, it's not Unix and BSD, it's macOS and BSD, because the components of the Unix kernel, Xenox kernel, Xenox or Unix or what the fuck it's called, they made a lot of it in-house, and then they took I think it's the driver stack, the sound stack, and the network stack from FreeBSD, and all the rest is done in-house.
Apple's proprietary technologies, and it's actually more similar to Linux as it is to Windows. That's why there are so many powerful tools integrated into macOS that you might know from Linux, like the ZSH shell or all the commands to list files, navigate through the terminal, grep, awk, and sed. There's also a package manager.
All of those is because it's POSIX compatible, by the way, or I think most of them are. It's part of the POSIX standards.
From macOS existing that is called Homebrew, and that works just like apt or pacman under Linux. You can even automate a lot of stuff on your Mac, like installing programs or managing .dot files, config.
as you can do on almost any operating system. You can automate tasks under Windows, Linux, FreeBSD, and yeah.
And system settings by using scripts and commands, just as you would typically do it under Linux. It all
And
feels
Windows.
like you are working on a Linux system, but with a better desktop and app support.
Like I said, you get the best of both worlds. You get the support that a big, massive corporate operating system gives you, and you get the POSIX world, the Unix-like world that you get with Windows and FreeBSD. It's like I said, for most Linux, I said this a lot of times, most Linux users, their perfect OS would be a Mac OS, because all of the things that they're bitching about the wish Linux had, Mac OS have. The only problem here is that you have to buy Mac hardware, and you're now locked into Mac hardware.
Now you can say that Windows also offers similar features with the introduction of WSL2 and some other nice projects like Cygwin, the Windows Terminal. I need to say I still love that under Windows. That's why I've made several video tutorials about that in the past. But this is still not a native Windows feature, because WSL2, for example, is actually just a small and highly customized virtual Linux system running inside Windows. And there are some problems that are based on that additional layer, such as this virtual machine has its own networking stack with a separate IP address, or when you want to install a program on Windows, you can't do that in WSL2, you always need to switch back to PowerShell. That is all not necessary under macOS. You can just open a terminal and natively access all your favorite terminal-based tools without having this extra layer of virtualization. That isn't just much faster, it also does away with some of the problems you might have with WSL2. So to summarize it, macOS is just better for me than Windows when I'm doing.
There is the... For all the fucking nuts, crazy people in the comment section, what he just said, that should be enough for you to just fuck off, okay?
Doing productivity work. It offers better features for programming, working in a terminal, and is very similar to Linux. That alone was enough to get me excited about
That's what's getting me excited.
macOS, but I also found out it even gets more and more useful when you combine it with other Apple products.
Of course.
You can like or dislike this strategy, but if you buy an iPhone and an Apple Watch, maybe an iPad, you get access.
And this is what I say to a lot of people, and I think this is why Apple people are so much Apple fans, is that if you commit to the Apple ecosystem, it's like living in the fucking future. Apple products, they become part of you. They become second nature to you. They become, you know, you are using them as an extension to some extent of yourself. Where a computer and even Android, you have to do a lot of fucking crazy shit to get the same, like, out of mind, out of thought kind of, you know, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. Like, you have to do a lot of manual shit to get just close to the conveniences of the Apple ecosystem. Like, if you have an Apple Watch and you sit in front of your computer, just automatically open it if you wanted to. If you have an iMac or something like that. You know, it's this seamlessly integration between laptop and tablet and watch and phone and OS, you know, MacBook Pro and so on, that it seems like they are one. When you're using an Apple product, no matter how many products you have, they all seem like they are one product. One product. Where if you're having a computer, you have a computer. If you have a phone, an Android phone, you have a phone. Even if you have like I have a Samsung tablet and a Samsung phone, they still feel like they're two separate devices versus just one. And that is really what also drives me a little bit over towards the Apple side of it, is that you get this feeling of unification. Like, you can add devices, take away devices, everything just feel like one thing.
Let's do some really cool things you can do with your Mac, because Apple products work together seamlessly. Like, you can answer a call on your iPhone or on your Mac, and when you need to walk away from your desk, you can just continue the same call on your phone without any interruptions. You can unlock your Mac with your Apple Watch. You don't need to type in a password to access your Mac. You can just press a button on your watch. It's just amazing. Or when you need to scan a document.
It's those wow factors that we need both under Windows and Linux, to be honest, but mostly under Linux because Windows is already owning the desktop market.
And you can click on import from iPhone or iPad and then use this device as a scanner. You can also share other files quickly and easily across your devices with AirDrop. Even things like copy and paste are available across these devices. For example, if you have written a longer text or you have a URL on your Mac that you just want to have on your phone, you can copy it on your Mac, and on your iPhone you simply paste it. You don't need to enable anything for these features or set up an application, it just magically works. These are the smaller things that you probably don't notice right from the beginning. I didn't know a lot of this stuff myself, but the more I've used my Mac together with other Apple devices, I just discovered some of these unique capabilities, and I often had this moment where I thought, wow, this is so easy and amazing.
That is what Apple understands from its consumer.
That is what makes my life easier, and it gives me some useful features that I didn't know from Windows. No, of course, this would mean absolutely nothing when my favorite programs wouldn't work on macOS. And I quickly need to address this because I had a few concerns about that. Because just like I said, Apple today offers only ARM-based systems with the M1 and M2 chips, and they probably won't go back to Intel anymore. Windows also did a few experiments in that area with Windows RT. Now it is called Windows on ARM. And we all know how that works. The main problem is that all the programs that were developed for an x86 architecture, they won't run natively on an ARM-based chip. So every developer needs to change their applications to support ARM-based CPUs, or they have to emulate them somehow. And Apple did something really cool to do that. They developed Rosetta. Rosetta is an emulator that translates the x86 instructions on the fly into ARM instructions in real time, and it works surprisingly well. So all the applications that were developed for x86 you can still run on macOS. Most people wouldn't even notice that. You just need to be aware this is still a translation, so programs that are not really made for ARM-based chips, they will run slower. But actually the support is pretty good. As you can see, there aren't many programs that run with the Rosetta translation layer on my Mac, so I never ran into any problems with that. As I said, most of the apps are available for Apple Silicon now, and the few ones that need to run with the Apple Rosetta engine, they just work great as they would work under Windows. Of course, when you think about games, this is something that a Mac isn't made for. I guess you can play a few games on a Mac.
Well, mobile games. If you're gaming on your mobile, Apple have you covered.
But to be honest, I actually haven't tried playing any games on my Mac, and I think you shouldn't buy a Mac for gaming. No. That is just what I can tell you. And overall, we have to accept that Windows still has the best compatibility out there. There's nothing you can do against that. However, I rarely see devices or programs that don't work on macOS but work under Windows. There will be always a few niche applications or devices where support is missing, but all the devices that I have are working great on Mac. All the Elgato stuff that I'm using for live streaming or video recording, they all work totally fine because Elgato offers drivers and applications for macOS.
And this, I'm sorry to say to all you fucking Linux code members out there, this is a deal breaker for most people. If you're a live streamer, this is definitely a deal breaker.
And Apple Silicon as well. But this might be a thing you need to keep in mind. If you buy an Apple computer, you get good compatibility with various hardware components and applications, but it's still lacking a bit behind Windows. Anyway, that is what I have to say about macOS and Windows and why I've made the switch. Before I stop the video, I just want to say, if you don't agree with some of these points or you just don't like macOS, it's totally fine. But it would be interesting for me to know how many of you are already working on a Mac, or how many of you are consider buying an Apple computer, because I think we could make some really nice content around this from time to time, like explaining all the terminal programs. You
get the idea here. He has a 40-second video. Why not Linux but Mac OS? Let's watch this also.
Some people in the comment section have recently asked, why am I using an Apple computer with macOS and not just Linux? Well, mainly because most of the productivity programs that I'm using don't natively run on it, like Affinity Designer, the Microsoft Office, and even some important devices like the Elgato Stream Deck or the Wave XLR that I'm using for live streaming and recording. They don't offer drivers for Linux, so I would actually have so many more problems in my day-to-day work, and I wouldn't really get much in return if you seriously think about it. And that's a simple reason why I'm not running Linux as my main OS, at least.
What this video is telling you is that better don't mean best. You can get a better system by running Linux. Faster, cheaper, more stable, more secure, unlimited upgrade, blah, 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 blah. The same with if you're running Windows compared to macOS. But that don't mean that it's the best. What is the best determines what is the best in your situation and for your needs. That's the best. See you all later. Bye-bye.